Hey there, welcome back. So, I'm going to talk about how the lies began to unravel. And of course, this day will always live in infamy. My ex had called. He had had a tragedy in his family, very unexpected. And we were going about the day per usual. Again, we had kind of come to a groove where we were cordial, we could talk, very friendly. All while I'm not gonna say I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, but we're just going through the motions, right? But we're cordial, we're friendly in the process. So it was kind of weird, especially when you know in the back of your mind that something is definitely not right. But the thing about my ex is he would never come clean. So bottom line, he had to be outed. And he was outed through a letter from child support enforcement. So again, that day was an interesting day. He had got a couple of pieces of bad news in a row that day. And I checked the mail that day and boom, there's the letter. And I'm like, OMG, what is this? I immediately knew when I saw it, I immediately knew that the things that I had been wondering were about to be unraveled. I knew it. My heart sank because it was undeniable that this was evidence without me even reading it. It was evident that he had another child. So I opened the letter, I read it. I'm trying to maintain my composure. I can't remember if I called him right away or if I went to search up the name of the woman because the letter had the child and the woman's name in it. And I did end up calling him. And I just asked him calmly, who is such and such? And who is such and such? Right? Asked him who the woman is, who the child is. And in true pathological liar fashion, he denied knowing either party. He denied knowing his own child. He denied knowing the mistress that he had been with since the beginning of our marriage. I don't think he was ready for that day based on that answer because it's like, okay, I'm looking at their names in black and white. Why are you telling me that you don't know who these people are? This child carries your last name, right? So he wouldn't give me an answer, right? He went on with the I don't know, I don't know. So I think I ended up hanging up on him because you're not going to play with my intelligence like that. I think I went on social media to search up the person to see if I could find this person. And lo and behold, I did. I found the person. I think she really wanted to be known and found. The dead giveaway was her picture was her with the child in the picture. And so I went to her profile and lo and behold, there's pictures of my ex and them, like, they're all a big happy family because this woman had other young children and they had one together. And this was like a slap in the face because I, for years, was raising his children while he was ignoring them or doing my best to help raise his children while I saw him ignore his children. But yet he's playing stepdaddy to somebody else's children. And then he goes and have another child with this woman, right? So I'm like, wow, 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 wow. And it was interesting because the pictures that I found was a period of time, a few months prior to the letter where he was telling me he was using his child as a reason why he was going to do something. Oh, I'm going here to blah, 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 blah. But it had nothing to do with his child. It had to do with him going and spending time with his family. And so when I saw the pictures, I was like, oh, that's what he was doing. When he was explaining to me that he was going here with his child and yeah, we going to do this. This is what he was telling me. But then come to find out, based on the pictures, they all hugged up like a family. You know what I'm saying? So that was interesting. So I found a picture of his child and I sent him a picture and just say, I see the resemblance, right? All he could do after that was try to get me to meet him somewhere because I think he was probably afraid. He probably was like, this lady is too calm. But honestly, my calm came because God really had me on a path of preparing me for this moment. Again, I had prayed about what I should do about my marriage to this man. And God's answer was just continue to do what you're supposed to do as a wife. Do not retaliate against him, right? But prior to that prayer, he had told me I was going to have to let go. I understood the let go part to mean something a little different, but it was all connected. The letting go and not retaliating and just continue to operate in my role. That was God's instruction to me. So I continued to do that. I continued to walk that path. And I had been doing it for a couple years by the time this letter came. So that's how, although I was incensed, I was enraged, I was embarrassed, I was crushed, all of those things, I was still able to maintain a level of calm in the midst of feeling like that because, again, I had been practicing this for a while. And it wasn't that I didn't know there was someone else, but I didn't know that the deception went that deep. Like to know that not only is there someone else, there's a child involved, there's other children that he's over there playing stepfather to. It's just a whole mess. So again, like I said, I was embarrassed. I felt like he intentionally set out to humiliate me. Like I said, him knowing my backstory, him knowing my life story, for him to go out and do what he did and go that far with it for that long, this felt like intentional humiliation. And like I said, I don't, although there is no honor in what either him or the mistress did, my issue would never be with the mistress because I don't know her and we didn't have any connection, any vows or nothing. But I do understand she didn't want to be in the background anymore. So she made sure that he got outed. She made sure that the truth about what he had been doing was in the forefront because she no longer wanted to play the background. She wanted him to choose. And he literally was getting caught up trying to straddle the fence, trying to play both sides, trying to be a husband and be a baby daddy over here, a boyfriend slash baby daddy. So he was caught in between two worlds, trying to play both roles, and he wasn't doing a great job at it. And what I've learned is that having that letter sent was her attempt at making sure that our marriage ended and making sure that she made him stay honorable to his word because he had been making a lot of promises to her over the years. And the reason she stayed quiet so long was because she truly believed him when he was making those promises. She believed that he would honor what he told her. She believed it. And so she said, well, I'm going to hold you to be accountable for what you've done, what you've created, and what you've said for the last however many years. I'm going to hold you accountable to it. And that was part of it was the child support paper coming in the mail. I am glad that I held myself accountable for my actions in that moment because I was enraged. When I got those papers, I was enraged. But you know what? I decided to just allow myself to feel that hurt, that shame, that humiliation, even that rage, and not actually act on it as far as physical acts. Now, I said some things, right, that I had to repent for and I had to pray about and ask God to forgive me for. I absolutely said things like that because I, when I saw that paper and when I read it, I realized that this was not an accident what he did. This was maliciously done. He did that, in my opinion, to hurt me. He allowed it to go on because his intention was to hurt me. His intention was to hurt me. I didn't understand in that moment, why was he still married to me if he had a whole nother child out in the world? Why did he never leave? But I'm glad I held myself into an accountability to feel what I felt, to feel angry, hurt, humiliated, embarrassed, right? I felt some things that I'm not going to repeat because I'll explain it later, but I allowed myself to feel what I had to feel in that moment. And I didn't go out and act on it. And he, like I said, he was calling and asking me to come meet him. But I just knew there was nothing good going to come out of me meeting him somewhere to talk. There was literally nothing to talk about. Reading that information, seeing that information, what is there to talk about? Absolutely nothing, in my opinion. If you allowed yourself to go this far and this low, what do we actually have to talk about? There's nothing we can talk about because you've shown who you are, and I have to believe it because it's here. I have to believe it. It's here. And that's how I had to think about it. That black and white coming in the mail was proof unequivocally of who this man was. The feelings that I had felt, the clues that was being dropped along the way over years, some things that I spoke almost prophetically, and he would deny it, but I was spot on, and I just didn't have the proof. But I was speaking and saying certain things, and it was absolutely correct. But he was just doing what a habitual liar does. He was denying everything. And this is even, I'm saying things I said in years past before this letter came. But it was like all of those things started flooding in as I'm wrapping my mind around, right? And this is just the tip of the iceberg of unraveling of a marriage, unraveling of a story. This is literally the tip of the iceberg, getting that letter in the mail. And there's so many more questions. There's so many more things that have yet to be resolved. There's so much more that has to be accounted for when you get a letter in the mail that your spouse has a child with another individual outside of your marriage and you're just finding out about it. They've known the whole time, right? But that is when it started to unravel. But you know how they say when you dig a hole for one person, you might as well dig two. Because again, I looked at this as something malicious that my ex was doing. He was maliciously trying to hurt me through cheating and then ultimately having a child with someone else and playing stepdaddy to someone else's children, right? He was maliciously trying to hurt me with all of these actions that he had done over a number of years. And he basically was waiting on the moment that he could kick me into that hole that he had dug. But like I said, when you dig a hole for one person, you better dig two because it's so much that you can't fathom. And I'll say it started with that day, even before the letter came. He got hit with two pieces of really bad news that same day. And then I got the letter from child support. And that was literally the last day that we stayed under the same roof together. Yeah, this is a lot for anybody to deal with, whether man or woman, to understand the level of betrayal that your spouse has gone to hurt you. But you can still hold yourself accountable for how you respond to it. And I didn't cuss him out, right? As angry as I was, as hurt as I was, he wasn't worth my energy. He just wasn't. Once I started to understand and then he lied, tried to lie about his own child and the mother of his child, when I saw he did that, I said, he's not worth the energy that it would take for me to lash out at him verbally or for me to go after him physically. He's not worth the energy. He's been doing this for years and he did not care who he affected, who he hurt. He didn't care. So, bottom line, long story short, you can still hold yourself accountable in the midst of your hurt that someone else has inflicted. You can still hold yourself accountable. And that's why I started off this series with talking about my own accountability for being in a marriage in the first place with a man that would go this far, with a man that would step out of the marriage within 6 months. I have to hold my L for even being in that situation. And then these are all the pieces that you unravel as you go through understanding how deep the deception, the psychosis of the person you were married to is, right? And how you allow things to unravel, hold your own accountability so that you don't become bitter and blame every other man for what one man did, right? So that's where I am with it. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know how I made it through that moment, but it started with my own accountability of thinking about what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? Putting consideration into, I feel like this, but if I do this, what happens next? And I think if more people just put thought into what happens next after you act on those emotions, it will help to keep you out of trouble. It'll help you to get through things in a better way. And again, I had to look at who I was dealing with. Although I had loved this man, I had done my best to honor him. He obviously did not feel the same way about me. So I was not going to exhaust my energy on something that is clear that this is what it is. There's no explaining it away. There's no excusing it away. I had to look at it for what it is. I had to accept it. I had to let myself feel what I felt. And I also had to keep myself accountable for how I reacted in that moment because the only thing I can control is me. Obviously, I could not control the man that I was married to, right? Nor should I, right? But I could only control me and how I respond or how I react in that moment of learning the details of the ultimate betrayal. And again, that was just the beginning. So, with that being said, that's it for this one.